Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Today, welcome back one of my favourite guests. This is his third appearance on the channel. Financial planner, I call him our Wall Street insider. He's the founder of 401 Financial and Turnkey Lab. So, welcome back, Tyrone. How have you been?
I am well, my man. I am well. It's good to see you again. Good to be back on. This. It's been a long time coming. A lot has happened since I last was on.
Yeah, I think the first time we chatted, it was kind of about Bitcoin and how that's getting recognized as maybe the real deal in Wall Street and with all those brokers and investors. And then the next cycle, I kind of touched on ETH and DeFi and whatnot. So I guess just in general, for maybe people that haven't watched our previous interviews, how have you seen that landscape change over those couple of cycles, and sort of where are we now?
Man, it's been quite the change. I think what's interesting now is there's been so much development in terms of other blockchains, right? And different L1s and different L2s. And as much as the haters say there's no use cases, right? There have been more use cases. When we last talked, there was really no NFTs, there was no DeFi summer. You got ordinals now on Bitcoin, right? You had that whole thing. So we weren't even thinking about these things when you and I chatted last. But what's interesting about it is we're still very early, right? So think about how early we were then. We're still very early, still figuring these things out, right? You got, Optimism and Arbitrum, Coinbase launches Base. You got, ZK rollups and all these other things now. So, and I think zero knowledge proofs are going to be something that pervades other markets, right? And will be an entree into other things for crypto. And then, of course, can't mention new technology without mentioning AI. I think at some point you get AI and crypto to bleed together in some really interesting things. So it's been an interesting environment. And then obviously, you had that run up in 21 and everyone was getting funded. I was fundraising then. So you go outside, snap your fingers, $1 million falls in your treasury,
Yeah.
right? It was an interesting fundraising environment. And then unfortunately, we had a bunch of clowns that have made a circus out of the space, and it hurt those of us that have been trying to help it gain credibility. So we could spend the next 4 hours, on all that has changed, but um, and we didn't even get into, which we can, the behemoths that are now getting in name, but they've been getting in over time over the last couple of years. So lots
Yeah.
of happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got some questions later on AI and how it ties to tech and semiconductors and a lot of the other things happening. But you mentioned then, and we've caught up in previous bear market cycles. So, how much do you think the whole FTX and then the flow-on effect Celsius and Blockfi, how much did that kind of shake the industry and hurt the reputations and that kind of thing, the trust on Wall Street?
Immensely. I think it completely decimated any type of credibility that the space have had. That set us back years. How many years? I don't know. But it set us back years because he was anointed, and I don't even want to say his name. Everyone knows who I'm talking about, the clown who ran FTX. He was anointed like, the crypto Jesus or something, the second coming. And it was all about how quickly they were moving and the money they were raising and the name on this and this, that, whatever. And then it turns out there's more than, when you go to the circus, there's always more than one clown. So there was other clowns that was aiding and abetting this nonsense. And I think you start to see this tangled web where it was just pushing money from one side of the space to the other. Retail, of course, gets decimated again after what happened, years prior, that 17, 18 type of time frame. So it's been devastating. And when you look at where I am trying to get the wealth managers and asset managers into the space, they hated it anyway. So now it gave them somebody to point at. And, oh, you're all like this. How did you didn't know, and so on and so forth. So, and it's just, for me, what was interesting is that I had some really close connections to, like, Zach Prince at Blockfi was, I was at Blockfi very early. I think they were less than 15 employees when I went to visit him, and I thought the world of Zach. right? And it was sad to see what happened at Blockfi. Prime Trust, my last company, we built an integration to Prime Trust, right? So to see what has happened with them, um, so many different connections. My RA, interesting story here. We had just opened an account at FTX, and it was a Sunday, and my CIO texted me. He goes, "Did you see CZ's tweet?" I said, "Yes, move it." Like, and we moved it on chain, and we got out of there that Monday. Right, dominoes fell. So, and it was like we had knew we wanted to have our assets in crypto and on chain, but we were, and he's a big DeFi person, and Eric is very much into ETH and in this space. So we had always thought about going on chain, but the whole thing was, all right, we'll get Bitcoin, we'll do some wrap Bitcoin, whatever else, whatever. So it wasn't like we were going to leave it there, but it was like, it was just at that point, it was a really good on ramp, right? Like, it's hard to argue that the technology was sound. It was a great platform, which is run by a clown. So anyway, it hurt a lot. It continues to be a deterrent, but I think we're slowly starting to work ourselves out of it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of, obviously we had pretty close ties with them as well, because it was the exchange with the most features and the most products, and a few of the things we'll get into, basket style ETFs of, that's, I think, was the real attraction. So that's why it hurt the space so much, because so many big names were there and so much money. Yeah.
Yep. A lot of money, a lot of fraud, of course. But what's crazy is the trust that he was given. Right, a lot of people trusted. And if you look at, they were just going into offering equities and everything there, and it was a whole thing, right? It was just money all over the place, right? He was just spraying and praying, and people were taking it, right? And doing business with him and whatever else. So, and again, some really good people hurt. Travis Kling, I hate what happened with him and his firm, very valued name in the space, and a lot of other folks that it was just rough to see. It's a hard time, really hard time in the space.
Moving on, we sort of spoke about Celsius and Blockfi and the yield in DeFi that was one of the big attractors, and now interest rates have gone up. So I guess, how's that backdrop been? What are you seeing? Because I know even like Apple now offering that savings account product, and people can get a lot higher yield just by seeing their money in the bank or with bonds. So how are you seeing inflation and that kind of take away from the risk asset? Is that just all a healthy part of this bear cycle before you think crypto becomes attractive again?
Yeah, I mean, so rates go up, folks start to, all right, well, I don't have to go into DeFi and bridge to this chain to be able to get 4, 5, 6, 7%. I don't have to go to BlockFi. I don't have to do all of these things. So we've seen that shift in our firm and just with our clients, right? Treasuries, right? Get you 4.5 or 5%, you're good, right? You can be safe. But you have seen, once the announcements with Coinbase and Gemini and others get under the eye of the law, that push to on-chain, and you started to see a lot of momentum there in terms of people just moving there and transacting or whatever else, but it's still way off the highs. So I think as far as crypto is concerned, it's very much a risk-off environment, right? I'm in a startup space, raising money for turnkey. Startup space is tough. There's no IPOs, right? You look at, in the inflation, how it just raged, and then the Fed is, increasing rates at the fastest pace in history. And then what happens with Silicon Valley Bank and everything else, where we banked at turnkey. Yeah. So, being front and center with this, I think is something where now kind of level setting, the data is kind of telling the story of what's going on here. Of the longer end of the curve is basically saying, hey, inflation is probably going to be here a while, right? Because the curve is inverted, folks thinking it'll be a recession. but some data shows that it's really not there. Yesterday, data came out. Credit card debt here in the U.S. 1 trillion, right? All-time high on an annual, percentage rate as well, 20.3%. Mortgages out of control, right? So there's just a lot of different parts here, and I think it's very much now. To be fair, you have seen the Nasdaq 100 run. I think you've seen the market come back a little bit. So the public tech is moving ahead. Private tech being marked to market in some of the valuations coming still needs to happen. But I think from a broader standpoint, I think it's still the pervading narrative here that is just going to continue to be a part of whatever folks are doing, whether raising capital, whether allocating capital, whether building a company, whether scaling a company. And as far as crypto is concerned, I think you look at how Bitcoin has performed this year, you look at how ETH has performed in this environment in light of all of the different news, that's a good sign, right? And Bitcoin now, 14, 15 years old, you're starting to see how it's, interacted with other asset classes during this environment. Volatility is extremely low right now. Correlation to the S&P is, I think as low as it's been in a really long time. So things are kind of finding, right? Water always finds its level. I think, crypto is finding its level too. I will put a ribbon on that by saying this. I do think though, and this has been the thing that folks don't understand. It's always been hard to get dollars into the space. Like it's just been difficult to get USD into the crypto space. Even with signature and all these, like the ways to get in, the on-ramps were tough, especially if you wanted to come in any size. And then you have some of that infrastructure gone, right? You could look at the trading volumes. It's just depressed. So I think that was always discounted. Folks that were either on the outside of the space or just kind of on the retail side. Coinbase made it easy or whatever. But for real capital to come in and help growth and help infrastructure and liquidity, which is why, again, we go back. Folks watch your show, they know how I feel about a Bitcoin ETF. I'm not going to get into that here. But that helps. An ETF would help because it would bring that liquidity into the space easily through on-ramps, right? Folks are not looking at it from that perspective. So the greasing of the wheels here, right, of the gears rather, to get more money in and allow things to happen, paired with high rates, folks taking a pause. Hey, what's going on here? Liquidity just left the space. Like it's just gone. So I think once again, if the Fed pauses, if they raise again, we'll see. If they're gonna hold tight, next one is a down round, if you will. We'll see. But I think until that, there's some clarity there. I just think it's gonna be very hard to get any liquidity into the space to see all these stupid projections people are making about what it's going to be by the next halving.
Yeah. I guess my thesis is a little bit along the lines of what I think M2 increased by, say, 40% since 2020 or whenever we had a lot of that printing and handouts. And I think we can see a scenario where things like commercial real estate perform pretty poorly, but other assets like tech and semiconductors, AI, whatever, there's just so much money out there. If you divide the value of the stock market by M2, we can get to these new all-time highs with the same percentage of money or less being reinjected into the market, if you get what I mean. So I think there's still a lot of potential upside in certain sectors, while the real economy could be in recession. We could see rising unemployment, but because they've just increased that M2 by so much, there's a lot of bullets in the gun still just waiting to be deployed, I think, for a lot of those big financial institutions. Do you agree with that, or?
I do, right? I think Matt Hogan always talks about this, where if you look at where Coinbase was just in terms of volumes and revenues and users pre all this nonsense and where they are now, they've grown throughout, right? Daily active addresses on Bitcoin. I think we got to 1 million now, right? Like, again, things growing. To your point, I think it's spot on in the sense that if you really look at what could possibly happen with any meaningful movement, right? Based on some of the announcements and some of the things that are out there, yeah, you could see, right, a rubber band just being pulled back, and we could see a fierce move here, right? It's just because you know what happens, right? You know this is we do this for a while, and I'm not a chart guy, but the chart guys will tell you, right? You kind of hit, you stuck. It's going to be a fierce move one way or the other, right? It's just coming. So whatever that catalyst is, you could see us easily run back to highs. Just how crypto moves. Yeah. And I think this is a very interesting time because it's kind of like boring. Yeah. But you know how it goes, man. If you've been in this space long enough, it's like a tinderbox, one thing, and then it just keeps adding on. And the next thing you know, 30, 40, 45, right? Yeah. And then this FOMO, and then retail goes, well, maybe I'll go back into my Coinbase account. What's the password? Yeah. Right? 50, 55. 60, right? And then once you get to 60, everyone's like, oh, we're going to crack. And then you know how that goes. It's just the human psychology of it. Will push it higher, I think. But yeah, I agree with you there. That makes some sense.
Well, let's dive into the ETFs, which is kind of everyone's talking about them, and it could be that spark. Larry Fink, and we've spoken about this in the past, how these big guys do the backflip. I'm saying, hey, it's all for criminals, and then I have no interest, and then all of a sudden they're on board, and it tends to happen once they've built those picks and shovels and that infrastructure for people to get the money in and make fees in that bear market. So what are your thoughts on BlackRock, Fidelity, and ARK, that Bitcoin ETF? We're already seeing ETH ETF applications, and then do you think
futures?
Yeah, do you think we get the basket of top 10 coins, and the same as we get for all different things, gold miners, index, juniors? Do you think all that comes eventually? And so how are you seeing all that landscape?
Wall Street, David Rubenstein, right, who everyone is retweeting now, that he said he thinks Bitcoin is here to stay. I watched that interview. Best part of that interview is when he said, Wall Street loves money. They're going to find a way to make money. Yeah. And I'm like, that's it. They're going to find a way to make money off of this. I've been saying it since 2000, whatever that was, 17 in consensus. 6 years later, I'm still saying it. It's a money grab. It's nothing else. Anybody, and again, I know a lot of the ETF mafia, Matt Hogan, Nate Geraci, Eric Balchunas, love them. Really good arguments. Mike Venuto, all wonderful dudes. I know them all. I cannot be convinced that we need it. We'll get it. They want it because it's going to print money. But you're telling me that as we sit here in 2023, retail investors need a Bitcoin ETF? There's a million ways to buy Bitcoin. What do we need an ETF for? It's going to stop trading when the crypto space trades 5 times more in regular market. So why are you going to put this futuristic thing, right? It's like taking an iPhone and putting it into VHS, right? And like trying to mix things. It makes no sense, except for it's going to generate a lot of fees. Fees for the issuer, fees for advisors, fees for the everyone who's involved, the market makers and all of those that are providing the data, the custodian. It's going to print money for those people. Let's just be honest. I'm okay if we're honest with it, but it's a money grab. I hate it. I'm not going to lie. I hate it. And again, I get it, but if you're truly here for what it means for access and financial inclusion, how does that help? Now, again, I understand different. If you don't want to use an ETF, I don't use it for an ETF. But what I think is missing in financial services is honesty. And just be honest. It's going to generate a lot of fees. Think about all the impressions that it made for people on Twitter, and that it makes for media, and that it makes for social media and influencers to talk about it. Bitcoin ETF, you put it in your little thumbnail. I mean, every crypto, everyone wants to click BlackRock, Bitcoin ETF. Am I lying? Like this is true. So where I would be okay with it is if GG, my boy at the SEC, right? If he was to go, hey, I'll give you a little goofy ETF. But for every $1 billion, or actually, no, not even $1 billion, for every 100 million that comes into this ETF, whatever percentage has to go to financial education in the United States of America. I'm for it. Do it. But if not, we're not approving it. And you say that to whoever submits an application, right? 0.25% of every 100 million is going to support financial education all over America. If you agree to that, we'll approve it. If not, take your ETF, take your application, get out. But off my soapbox. But I think, will we get it? Yes. BlackRock coming in, is that a signal to other things? Absolutely. Fidelity, sure. And then I think if we get one, we're going to get a bunch. Bitwise will get theirs approved. Van Eck will get theirs approved. ARK will get theirs approved. Fidelity will get theirs. We'll have a bunch of them. And they'll all make a ton of money.
And what are the negatives to watch out for? How concerned are you that the spot ETF where they hold real Bitcoin and we can verify that on chain versus going down this path of, just in time inventory like spot gold ETFs, or we get all these theories about, silver and the warehouses not having enough if everyone tried to claim it, and, paper backing and claims on real assets. Like, are you concerned about that? Do you think Bitcoin would be easier to make sure it's all backed one by one?
It should be, right? Because you can easily look on chain and see, right, proof of reserves and everything else, or proof of liabilities too. There's a lot of proofs we need. But Caitlin Long has been saying this for a long time. Shout to Caitlin. Rehypothecation, which again, there's some arguments to be made for the positive things of rehypothecation, how banks do that. But there is going to be some synthetic Bitcoin floating around. It just is, right?
Yeah.
So she's made this case way better than I could, but yes, it should be verifiable. We should be able to say, all right, let's look on chain and see how much Bitcoin BlackRock actually hold. Which, to your point, I think is important, is we look at all of these disclosure statements and applications to see how exactly are they going to go about this. Who's the custodian? Right? And there's clarity on how it's being held, where it's being held, how often it's going to be verified, all these different things.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. In terms of that US regulatory environment, we know like BlackRock has a lot of sway. I think one of the things we're starting to see is because of the crackdown, a lot of the innovation is moving to possibly the East, and China and Russia are saying, hey, maybe you can mine crypto here, or maybe we're going to do more trade with Bitcoin. And, places like Bali, one of Australia's neighbours, has got a lot better tax now, and a lot of people are moving there. So how are you seeing that US regulatory front in terms of cracking down too hard on crypto and risking that innovation move away?
It's running talent and companies to those places. They are being heavy-handed here. There has been some progress. It's split like everything else in this country. Everything in America is divided. The Republicans are supporting it. The Democrats hate it. Which you think the Democrats, the party of the people, should love an innovation that provides access and financial inclusion, but I digress. So there's going to be that battle. And I just think there's just not much clarity right now. We got to get the stable coin bill done. You got to figure out who's really the person here. Is it the SEC or the CFTC? protocols that want to build and want to launch, like they're not doing anything. You have Revolut, eToro, Robinhood, and others delisting things. It's just a mess, and the environment is very sketchy. I actually have a meeting with the SEC Friday to have a conversation about like a company that I want to build, but I want their guidance. So I'm trying it out. I'm gonna go to them first. Say, hey, here's what I want to do. What do you think? Give me some guidance. So this is what we're forced to do. If you want to see innovation in the space, to engage with them beforehand and see where that gets you. But it's a mess, man. It really is a mess. I do think we are in a situation where there's going to be some progress soon, but it's forcing a lot of people to look overseas, and where we should be leading here as a country, we've fallen woefully behind. I mean, even a year, was it MICAS, whatever they rolled out, some infrastructure and rules. So it's like we're just woefully behind. So we need to get our act together. Of course, this falls right in line with an election coming up, so it's going to be an issue there, and folks are going to vote because of it either way. And
Yeah,
so
that was my next question. I'm not sure where you fall on the political spectrum, but RFK, I think DeSantis and a couple of the guys have come out and said they're pretty pro Bitcoin, or we might even back the dollar with a bit of Bitcoin. How big a political issue do you think this is going to be enough to sort of get more people on board and sway? And how are you seeing all that stuff with Trump and Biden? It's just such an interesting environment over there at the moment.
Yeah, it's super divisive. It's interesting to see DeSantis and RFK say what they said about Bitcoin. I think folks are excited by that. I'm not a one issue voter. I think that's cool, but who trusts a politician? Like, I don't believe him, right? So I think that's cool. And if they're looking for that vote, I think that makes some sense. I don't believe them. I'm incredibly disappointed in the Democratic Party, although I did have a closed door meeting with Cory Booker last year that I was encouraged by. We were able to sit Senator Cory Booker and express to him our concerns and how we thought the innovation should be fostered and nurtured in order to help the constituency, right? The folks that they're supposed to fight for, supposedly. And he seemed to be open to that. I haven't really heard him say anything since. So I've tried to lend my voice and my ear to listening and providing feedback. But I've been saying all along, I'm not confident we get it right. I do hope at some point, though, we have a candidate that is young, for one, younger than 80. How about that?
Yeah.
But is going to go back to that innovation, America first, big brain ideas, right? The New Deal, if you will, type of vibe, where it's just, all right, let's get America back at the forefront of innovation. But I don't see that anywhere in any of these candidates. I'm not impressed by any of them. I'm not impressed by either party.
Yeah.
I think this is something that's going to have to be grassroots at the local level, like all politics, to be honest. And I think if we vote locally, smartly, with intent, I think that'll work its way into the annals of the Capitol Hill, where it matters most. But it's gonna be down ballot now. It's not going to be with those clowns that are, again, part of that circle.
So we've touched on the ETF side of things, but I guess how big a sway do you think some of these big financial tech companies can have in the realm of the other layer ones? We've just seen PayPal go with Ethereum for their stable coin. All this talk about Twitter and Will Musk start to integrate, say, maybe Bitcoin and Ether, maybe Doge or something like that. Do you think these really big companies can almost choose the winners to some degree? And, some people are still talking about XRP and the quantum financial system. So what are your thoughts on kind of all those who can be the major winners?
I mean, PayPal has been active. Stock price is not reflective of that. I think it's like it approaches 6-year lows or something. So they're paying the price. But PayPal has been active. And even before this, right, I think, again, holding $1 billion of crypto, right, of Bitcoin and ETH for folks. This stable coin with Paxos is interesting, right, on Ethereum. Probably could have done something cheaper, but whatever. They making it seem as though the gas fees are on them, right? So long as you're in their little ecosystem. If you try to go outside of that, different. But it seems like from what I read, if you're in their little ecosystem, it's on the house. We'll see. So again, they have to be able to do that. BlackRock, PayPal, it's huge, right? The largest asset manager, right? Largest payments company in financial services. That's huge. What Musk is going to do, turn in Twitter into a super app, if that's his plan, we'll see. It's hard to bet against that man, right? He's incredibly rich. He's incredibly smart. He's polarizing. And he just, when he wants something, he gets it done. You got to give him that. I think he's ruined the platform. I've built my whole life on Twitter. I'm sad to see it in the state that it's in, but I still think Elon is Elon. It's hard to bet against him. It's just hard. But I do think with Doge being involved in that and whatever he chooses to put a part of that, he just has a bunch of minions and money and power and reach where he could move markets. He could make things happen. And I'm sure he gets pitched all types of stuff all the time from large conglomerates that either want to do some stuff or whatever as far as the space is concerned. I do think they are going to have a major play here in what happens in crypto moving forward.
Yeah.
Don't look now, but it's been co-opted. Yeah. Virtu, Schwab, Fidelity, Citadel, BlackRock, right? PayPal. It's co-opted.
Yeah.
And NASDAQ was going to launch a custodian. Again, they backed out. There are some monsters that are just waiting to eat. And and Fidelity as well, right? I didn't even mention, like, there are some monsters here that are waiting, and they're going to determine the path here. Because here's the thing. A lot of crypto projects are going to die. They're going to run out of money. They're not going to get funded again. They're going to get bought. There's a lot that's going to happen here. No one's talking about this because if you listen to all the spaces, it's so amazing to me, as long as I've been in the space, how much we missed the mark. Which is why the space is still a pimple on an elephant's butt, and it's the kids' table at the family barbecue.
Yeah.
And that's my biggest worry. That will always be the kid table, that we won't grow up. And we just missed the mark. The people with the biggest voices missed the mark, right? Like, it just, what are you talking about? And when you really look at what's happening here, and they get all excited about these big names coming in, but have no idea what they've been doing on the back end and preparing for this, right? To move the markets, to get what they want and gobble up the space and the talent and the technology and use it the way they want it to be used. By the way, don't look now. All the folks that we talking about have a lot of money to what? Lobby.
Yeah.
Lobby who? On the Hill. Yeah. So it's just this layer that crypto is just not big enough. And those who have diamond hands and wealth, your Mike Novogratz of the world, right? What's the other? Who runs DCG? I can't think of his name right now.
Barry Silbert.
Like, they got it, but they ain't got it like mother folks, because their wealth is tied to crypto, right? DCG going through their whole thing, right? So we don't really have, and Coinbase, right? And you got Armstrong and all that, but look at, Coinbase has done well this year, right? Stock is up, over 200%, I believe. these companies we're talking about with 6 months of free cash flow,
Yeah.
if they wanted to buy Coinbase,
Yeah.
or like, and Coinbase is doing some things. They just bought back some bonds. They're doing some things, but look at where it was and where it is now. Look at Gemini. Look at some, like, I think in the next 2-3 years, the space is going to look totally different. And then those of us that have been here are going to go, oh my God, look what happened.
Yeah.
Right? They let us play around in the sandbox, and then all of a sudden they just went and said, everyone come in.
Yeah.
Right? And then scoop them all up and make it their own. And it's we don't have our eye on the ball, and I think you can see that happening if you're just paying any bit of attention.
Yeah, I guess one of the large companies that maybe hasn't been successful in their crypto move is Facebook or Meta. Have you heard anything on that front? I know Threads has been a bit of a flop that they launched recently, but Zuckerberg's whole idea of turning Facebook into a sort of metaverse, I think gaming coins and all that are going to bounce back, and that whole AR, VR thing will become popular again at some point. Maybe we're just a bit too early, but yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, major whiff by them. I hopped on Threads like everybody else. I was there for a couple of days, and it was just like, nah. You know what I mean? It did remind me of old Twitter back in the day, which was awesome. I go in every once in a while. Hopefully, they build it out, because Twitter is just not Twitter. Again, I'm still calling it Twitter. X. It's not what it used to be. But yeah, I mean, let's go back to when they were trying to do DM, right? And they were trying to do that whole thing and roll that out through WhatsApp and have their own, currency and that whole thing there. So it's just been a bunch of missed moves, but that team is going on to do some wonderful things. Marcus and those folks. So I don't know. Coinbase has, again, they have billions of people, and could be instrumental in getting more people into the space, but they're just not moving right with it. So I wouldn't count on them to, I don't know, maybe he takes one more crack at it, but yeah. It'll be tough. They've missed 2 big misses already.
Cool. Well, I guess next thing I want to talk about was you mentioned it before, the integration of 2 of these worlds. So digital identity, AI, tech and semiconductors. We continue to live in a more software and digital world, the exponential age, as Raoul Paul likes to say. So, yeah, what are some of your general thoughts on, is AI going too fast? And, I guess we're seeing this wave of people with anxiety and depression, and the world's getting faster and faster, and there's more noise. So is that the kind of thing that's getting us out of touch with nature? And is it scary, even though we might get huge benefits from living in this digital world?
Yeah, it is scary. I am far from a technical mind, even though I'm in the tech space. But if you listen to the people that matter, I was just listening to a podcast with Frank Slootman, who's the CEO of Snowflake, Mark Andreessen, all these folks, Vinod Khosla. AI is a big deal. Like, they're all saying, like, this is, in their lifetimes, this is kind of like one of those shifts. Chris Dixon, all these folks that I respect, Paul Graham, Fred Wilson. It's a big deal, right? Kathy Wood. These folks are realizing the potential of AI here. It is moving too fast. We use it at our firm at 401 for a lot of different things, and it's just remarkable what it can do. It's just going to make productivity 100x, right? You can get so much more done with it. There are going to be jobs impacted by that. And I also think, to your point, we are at a situation now where if you zoom out, or if you're in and you just kind of look at the blaring red signs, there are a lot of people struggling with mental health and depression, a lot of people who are not physically well, a lot of people who are getting connection from social media and not real life interactions, especially young men. There's a lot of things here that aren't good. And Then you have, again, can't speak for where you are, but here in the US, again, incredibly divisive. Everything is a fight. Everything is an argument. Everything is I'm on this side, you're on this side. You add technology to that that's going to displace people, and then you get a potential haves versus the have-nots. And I think that's what's scary. And I think we're headed to that if we don't. Little tangent here. If you look at any other era in the United States history, and even in world history, but if you look at any other era, these cataclysmic shifts were made with leaders, however you want to define them. Some of them were awful people. Some of them were wonderful people. There was always leaders who were at the forefront of this. Who is that now? There's no great unifier in the United States where we all go, this is the person that is going to lead us through this change in AI. This person is going to lead us through, COVID. This person, it just, if anything, our leaders have divided us. So we're void of leadership while we have all this change coming. That's a bad mix. I'll also say this. Think about this. Even if it's a leader that is not overwhelmingly popular, you get people to unite by dismantling this person and not liking them. We don't even have that. We have everyone. This is my party. This is my vax, anti-vax, tall, short, fat, trans. Everyone has a corner, and there's no leader that is unifying, bringing everyone to the middle, saying, hey, everyone relax. I'm going to get us through this. Pick any other era. There was someone there to make sense of it all. We have a president that is falling asleep during meetings, right? So I think that's the scariest part of this. There's no one that we look at to go, she's going to get us out of this 100%, see us through it, bring people together for the common good, right? You come to the United States of America, the streets are lined with tents and human beings. While there is a man that is worth $200 billion in the same country. Make it make sense, right? 1% of black boys in 12th grade in this country who look like me read at level. 1%. That is failure on every level. Everyone is affected by that. The levels of mental health and suicide, shootings, all these things. We need a leader, which is why every time I talk to college kids and I talk to kids, I plead with them. One of you has to lead us, unify, unite under a common cause, which is just one blood. Because I know one thing, whether you are vaxxed or not vaxxed, Republican, Democrat, rich, poor, whatever. If I need blood and I'm going to die, and Alex is my blood type, you can help me. You think I care who you voted for? I need blood. I want to live. So until we get someone that understands it's one blood, it's one humanity, we have to get back to humanity. If we don't get back to that, we're all dead. They're saying there's aliens now. Yeah. Like we actually have aliens that they can. So it's like, when is someone going to stand up, not be about the dollar, not be about a power grab, to say, my job as a leader is of people and of humanity that is independent of party, class, race, religion, creed, denomination, height, favorite cookie, doesn't matter. I'm for all people, and I'm going to show you that I mean it. We don't get that, nothing we talked about matters.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, because it's going to be like Lord of the Flies. We'll just eat the country from within. Every major city right now is ravaged with crime and homelessness. Meanwhile, financial literacy, debt, mental illness, all these things continue to go up and to the right. Somebody has to stand up and go, enough.
Yeah.
I don't see that person.
Yeah, I think the worry for me is that because it's so corporate and profit driven now and everything has to be continual growth and whatever, it's like, well, what is that breaking point? And lockdowns almost gave us a glimpse into the future of, well, what happens when we have more screen time? It's just everyone gets so much worse, so much quicker. And if we're living in virtual environments, as you say, obesity, all those things become worse, which then affect the mind. So that's the worry for me. It's kind of like, well, what is the breaking point? And it probably gets me to this. My final question I had for you was, I know we're both into the mind, body. I've been doing saunas, cold plunges, meditation, everything I can to really get back to 100% mental and physical health. So I think it's more people are getting into this stuff, which is great, and refining themselves and being happy again. But what are some of your routines, and how important do you believe all that stuff is?
Incredibly important. And just to double down on your point before I get to that, that's the other thing is folks really don't want to go outside because they're concerned about public safety, right? When we should be encouraging people to get outside, get vitamin D, go to parks, go out, right? But anyway, I digress. And that is a major concern. I'm with you there. You just can't be in this virtual world. You actually need to be able. I tweeted this the other day. It's nothing like an in-person coffee meeting, like actually just sitting with somebody, getting coffee and just chopping it up. It's the best thing. And I think already people are taking for granted that it wasn't too long ago we couldn't do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And, I know it was really bad there. And I was in New Jersey where it was awful too. Like, I think out of the whole U.S., I was in Jersey at the time before I left November 20 to come to California, which was like, I went from worse to bad because it was, King Newsom here. It was running it like, it was his own country. But that ability to go out and sit with people and interact with them is, I don't take that for granted now at all. But to answer your question, so for me is a couple things. One, as we spoke about before we came on, being highly trained and being an athlete and running since 13 years old, one of the things that I'd never done as much as I do now is walk. Like I walk 13, 14 miles a day, independent of just my other workouts. Like I just walk, and I can't even begin to say what it's done for my mind. As someone who struggled with depression and mental health, and at one point I was suicidal. So what it's done for my mental health, what it's done for my overall health, and just my overall fitness too. I tell all my workout warriors, not only is it a great recovery exercise, but you walk a lot. When I sprint, I'm like, wait a minute, where was this all my life? Yeah. But it's just an incredible exercise. So I walk a lot. I'm maniacal about my nutrition. I track my macros, and that's done wonders for me. Obviously, I work out every day, right? 6 days a week. I do take a recovery day. I don't meditate, but I pray a lot. And a lot of that is while I'm walking, right? So many different things, man. But the main one, whenever I'm asked that now, is walking. Like it just is unreal what it does. And sleep is another one. I am a sleep diva. I'm maniacal about my sleep. But sleep, walking, and nutrition have been pillars for me. And as you're 36, you said. I just turned 44 last week. Yeah. Those that are over 40 will feel what I'm about to say. When you get 40 and older, your bullshit filter is at maximum. You take no BS. You remove anything that would even be close to a nuisance, and you remove it from your life. People, arguments, everything. You just remove it all because you have no tolerance for it. I don't know what it is, but it's like the minute you hit 40, you're just like, I don't have time for this. Why am I arguing with you over a parking space? Like, you can have it, right? So I've realized now being self-love is so important. And if something doesn't serve you, get it out of your life. Relationships, whether that's business or personal, music that's not edifying, foods that is not edifying, who you follow on social media, whatever it is, like remove it and only bring things in that edify you and make you a better person. And that has been monumental for me, my man.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that about the depression and that as well. And I can definitely relate. When I came off the painkillers after being on them for years, breaking my back, I had to rebuild myself from scratch in terms of endorphins and do all these things to build them back up. And interesting you say about walking, because there's a lot of evidence now talking about the flow state.
No.
As opposed to this world of constant noise and notifications and whatever, and people these days, a lot of people never get into that flow state. So that's interesting. You say walking's been so great for you.
Incredible. It's such a it's the best natural steroid there is, man. I mean, it's funny. I tell people all the time, the reason bodybuilders do it, right? Their cardio is walking because it burns fat,
Yeah.
right? And it's a very safe cardio, but they've been on to something. And then you know, folks from hundreds of years ago, walking was the thing.
Yeah.
Strengthens your feet, right? And if you have any back issues, you know, heart rate, everything. It's just an incredible thing. And then you get into nature, and then you can kind of boost it there and get around trees and get all of that. It's just an incredible tool that it's one of those things people don't do enough. And the other thing I'll say is this, and I was just talking about this, and you know, coming off this diet that I did for 8 weeks, the average person just doesn't eat enough protein.
Mm-hmm.
And if you eat more protein, it's a life changer.
Yeah.
Like it just changes. It changes your physique. It changes all your biomarkers because you're not eating more of other stuff because you're, you know, satiated from, you know, the protein. So that is another big one. I've focused on getting a lot of protein, and it's been, again, a game changer.
Yeah, I completely agree with that as well. Well, mate, it's been an awesome conversation. I'm sure everyone's really appreciated you coming on for the third time. We'll have to do it again in future. But any final thoughts for everyone?
Yeah, we got to get together for a track workout, man.
Yeah.
So I have to say this. So I found out, I want to say real quick, it was last year or whatever, my grandmother is from New Zealand. She was adopted, and we found out that she was from New Zealand. And it was the coolest thing. It was the coolest thing to find out. And after that, I did a 23andMe and all this other stuff. But anyway, I just wanted to say that.
Awesome.
So it really, I still, you know, I got to get to that region of the world, but me and planes don't get along. But yeah, man, we got to link up for a workout at some point. But it was great to see you again. This is always a lot of fun. I imagine, you know, folks kind of like it when we get together. So I think they'll enjoy this episode too.
I hope so. And absolutely, mate, if you're on this side of the world, we'll make it happen, or I'll get over there one day. So until next time, mate, take care and look after yourself. Thanks, guys.